All right, these are three Browns offensive moves that aren't being talked about enough, according to Dawg Pound Daily. So number 3 is acquiring Chase Winovich, edge rusher, outside linebacker, would be kind of that depth piece. I don't think you're counting on him to be a number 2. What are your thoughts on that, Chase Winovich, and what he could mean?
I think there's a chance he could have a big role. I'm not willing to assume that right now. And probably a lot of that is because he didn't have much impact with the Patriots last year, and injuries played a role in that. And I think he kind of fell out of favor with Bill Belichick for whatever reason, wasn't used much at all. But if he fills that number 3 role, which currently is vacant, so is the number 2 role. But if he fills that number 3 role, then yeah, he'll be important. He'll need to get to the quarterback, because I thought Takk McKinley did a good job in that before he got hurt last year. And he dealt with injuries a couple times throughout the year. But when he was on the field, I thought he was effective. And I think McKinley had a bigger resume than Winovich does. But the Browns need someone to step into that role, and I think Winovich will get the first chance to do that.
Number 2 on this list, wide receiver and a return guy, and that's Jakeem Grant. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a moment. I think this was one that people are kind of overlooking. I'm not saying he's a number 2 receiver, but he is a guy that has a skill set that you can use and use effectively. He's a guy that makes big plays in the passing game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as a returner, obviously they need him, right? I mean, it's huge. They had a big gap there for years, right? Not being able to generate anything explosive in the return game. So that's the first reason the Browns got him. But I do think his ability as a receiver has been overlooked, and he can have a role, no doubt in my mind, in the offense. And it's interesting. We talk so much about the Browns need receivers, and I'm not arguing that they don't. But when you start looking at kind of the bottom half of the depth chart, there's a lot of guys there, right? If you say you got, right now, there's Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones. You say those are your 2 starters before any moves are made. You also have Jakeem Grant. You have Anthony Schwartz. You have Demetric Felton, right? Cross between running back and receiver, but played more at receiver last year. Jamarcus Bradley. Like, all of a sudden, there's some names there of guys that at least have had some experience, or the Browns have high hopes for, like a guy like Anthony Schwartz. So I'm curious whether or not the Browns will make 2 big receiver additions between now and, training camp, whether it's free agency or the draft, or if they only make 1 big receiver move, kind of slot a guy in at number 2 and feel like they have enough down the roster depth.
The other one we talked a little bit about, Amari Cooper, is the top acquisition for the Browns in the offseason that's not being talked about enough, and it's being overshadowed because of the Deshaun Watson acquisition. How good do you think Cooper is? What type of year you think he has with Deshaun Watson in this Browns offense?
I think it's a chance to have a big year. I mean, the guy's had 5 1,000-yard seasons in 7 years in the NFL. He's shown really good hands, the ability to get open. Now, he's not as flashy as an OBJ or a Tyreek Hill, right? But I do think he will be productive. I think this is a good offense for him. If you run the right routes and you're in the right spot, you have a chance to make plays. If the run game is what it has been the last 2 years under Coach Kevin Stefanski, then that opens things up for the passing game. It opens things up for your number 1 receiver running those deep digs, those crossing routes, because there's so much play action. I think Deshaun Watson being able to keep plays alive would give Amari Cooper a chance to get deep downfield and make a lot of plays down the field. So, you're right. Deshaun Watson is taking all the spotlight, but Amari Cooper is the other big move, and they're connected, and it's a huge move because that was the Browns' number 1 need entering the offseason, was finding that number 1 wideout.